Chairman, let me start at the outset. I'm an accountant. I value audits. My wife was an IRS auditor, so we need that. There's no doubt about it. Okay, you can argue legitimately, to what extent, how many auditors, how much we should spend on it. That's legitimate conversation. I do have to admit, though, every time I hear the chairman or the chairman of the Finance Committee say the word wealthy tax cheat, I think of the name Hunter Biden and all of the Biden family members who have been participating in his influence peddling grifts. I think it's interesting, as much as this hearing is emphasizing on audits, that when Senator Grassley and I were conducting our very legitimate investigation, using our constitutional responsibility of oversight, when we were investigating tax cheating, influence peddling, money coming in, tens of millions of dollars from foreign entities to impact potentially U.S. policy. Democrat senators, our ranking members, not only frustrated, I would say obstructed our investigation by falsely claiming we were soliciting and disseminating Russian disinformation. Now, that just happened to parrot what we've now found out the FBI set up their Foreign Influence Task Force, what they were doing in their catch and kill operation, find derogatory information that was being developed by 40 confidential human sources, and then go kill it. Go say, no, don't look into that. Don't go down that investigatory hole, because that's Russian disinformation. So the question I have based on that, Professor Sarin, it's obvious we have a dual system of justice applied to tax compliance. When somebody is connected politically as Hunter Biden, when his investigatory team allows the statute of limitations to expire on the most serious tax evasion charges, what does that dual system of justice, what does that do in terms of taxpayer compliance?
So, Senator Johnson, I actually want to take a step even higher, but with your sort of theme of democracy and heart. In this country today, we have a two-tiered tax system, as you acknowledge. Your constituents who are wage earners are already paying everything that they owe, and a very small proportion of very wealthy individuals and large corporations have the opportunity to...
Okay, and that was your testimony. Again, I want you to speak to the fact that the president's son is largely skating because they allowed the statute of limitations to run. What does that do to compliance in terms of Americans' attitude toward that, Professor Hendren? I've got other things I need to get to here.
I have very little to say on Hunter Biden. It's a very small portion of the tax gap.
That is true, but it's a very large portion in terms of Americans' attitude toward our dual system of justice.
So
Mr. Edwards, what do you think that does in terms of the public opinion of complying with taxes when one wealthy, connected individual basically avoids prosecution?
I agree, and it shows a general problem. There's a huge IRS management problem. We ought to fix IRS management before anything else. The IRS, lost or destroyed 30 million tax returns in Ogden, Utah. They don't have a good explanation for that. The huge theft of thousands of high-end tax returns a couple years ago. There's a big management
politically motivated theft and then distribution to ProPublica. Okay, that's politically motivated. I want to turn to the solution here. Again, I'm all for auditing. We're always going to need it. The solution is simplifying and rationalizing our tax code. I developed this chart years ago. I think it's quite interesting. This goes back to 1959 and shows the top marginal tax rate. To what extent were we going to punish success, and then the extent to which we were successful at punishing success. It's remarkable. Over 60-some years, we've had as top tax rate as high as 91%, 70%, 50%, 28, 31, 39.6, 35. Now we're at 37%. But over that 60-year time period, the average percent of GDP that we've raised in revenue is 17.3%. It doesn't change much because our tax code is so complex and as a result so difficult to comply with. It is notable that even after the tax cuts from 2018, the last 3 years has been above that average, 17.9, 19.6%. Last year was 18.2%. So increasing tax rates is not going to work. I would say dramatically, and I mean dramatically, simplifying but also use the term rationalizing. Our tax code is completely irrational. We have different forms of tax rates on different kinds of incomes. I mean, income ought to be income. From my standpoint, it ought to be based on cash generation. There's so many ways of simplifying this, and right there, you would dramatically increase compliance because, again, if tax rates are kept low, it's easy to comply with. There's the solution. Let's quit talking about sending more agents to harass Americans, and let's talk about the real solution, which is simplification and rationalization. Would any of you like to comment on that?
I would just like to comment. Professor Sarin's chart that was put up by the chairman is a fascinating chart. I would differ from Senator Romney in that it's true that modern businesses got complex. A lot of what drives that chart, frankly, is corporations making extremely sophisticated structures to avoid tax. They don't try to do things that are illegal. It's just that the tax code is so gray, they push the limits, and that's what I experienced at 5 years of PwC. That's what they try to do, push to the limit of a very gray code.
Senator Merkley. Senator Merkley's time is, we're in Senator Merkley's time now.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Is it correct that the IRS estimates that it collected $688 billion less by the tax filing deadline than taxpayers legally owed in tax year 2021? And I think Dr. Sarin or Dr. Hendren?
That's correct.
That's correct numbers. No, I'm the son of a mechanic, and my father always said, I sure am glad that I get to pay taxes, because there's been times in life when I didn't earn enough money to owe any. And he was very proud of contributing to the national effort, participating in the services our nation provides, be it law and order, the court system, the transportation system, fundamental humanitarian services to support families' success and so forth. I just heard the allegation that collecting taxes due is punishing success. Is it punishment of success to enforce the tax code?
Absolutely not, Senator Merkley. And I'll just say that outside of the IRS building, there's a quote from Oliver Wendell Holmes that say that taxes are the price we pay for a civilized society. And I feel very deeply with your father's sentiment. And I think that's frankly what the American people feel as well.
Well, I certainly believe that it undermines that sense of fairness and participation if the best off among us have full permission to cheat and not pay their share. Do you agree with that?
Absolutely, very much so. And in fact, ordinary Americans are automatically paying all that they owe. Their taxes are withheld. It's just those at the top of the distribution who earn income in opaque ways that have the opportunity to evade. So,
colleagues across the aisle have proposed not enforcing the tax code with the richest Americans. They want to let them cheat. Is that good for America?
I guess I get to take it. You know, I think it's a very inefficient thing to do. Our work suggests that we can get back, as I said before, $12 for every dollar that we put in to IRS enforcement, and that makes it even a more efficient way of raising revenue relative to other sources of like tax rates.
And Senator Merkley, as you point out, it's not just a matter of revenue raising, though it is 3% of GDP that we're losing each year in uncollected taxes, but it's also this matter of like fundamental fairness, that the laws should apply. I believe, I'm a law professor, I believe very strongly in the rule of law. The laws should apply across the income distribution, and it shouldn't be that the wealthy and large profitable corporations have at their disposal tools to evade that the rest of the American people do not.
So that 3% of GDP that should be collected under the rules means we have to borrow that additional amount. Is borrowing more in order to let the wealthiest off the hook good for America?
It's not, and neither, frankly, is raising taxes that are only going to be borne by the share of taxpayers that are complying with their tax obligations. So as we think about how to deal with our growing deficits and our debt problem, it strikes me that the lowest hanging fruit has to be collecting the taxes that are already owed by taxpayers who today are at the top of the distribution, are doing the best, and just aren't paying their fair share.
Well, I must say, and I live in a blue-collar community, and I think the sentiment would be universal that while we're paying our fair share, the wealthy need to pay their fair share too. And because it's not collected in advance, and that's kind of a privilege of the type of income they're earning, that in fact they need to know that they'll be held accountable. So there's an incentive to be honest up front. Unfortunately, it takes an incentive for many individuals in America who see this not as the honor of doing their share as a citizen, but see it as a game to be played to cheat the system as much as possible. And I was struck when I first went to college and started hearing fairly affluent people talking about the pride they had on having developed different tax strategies to dodge, including out-of-country strategies. And that was so contrary to the vision that I believe in of everyone doing their fair share in part for this country. So thank you all for your testimony. I hope we'll see an eruption of integrity across the board and bipartisan support for the integrity of every citizen paying their fair share, and not a strategy of trying to let the richest Americans cheat, undermining the success of the entire social contract across this country. Thank you.